imagine you know you're going to die, and it reasonably should be considered that it would happen soon after you're told that you're going to die, and you sit there for 10 years waiting to die.
Outright punishment that like you're not even given a chance to make amends. They just want to punish you so that people feel better about themselves.
It actually is effective, especially when you have like such a large chunk of the population that thinks if we didn't have religion, we'd all be killing each other.
If you're arguing that the death penalty decreases people's incentive to commit murder, but a certain state that eliminates the death penalty, if the murder rate doesn't change, well, then that shows that the death penalty didn't have an effect on that.
No, it doesn't. You're talking about human beings.
Well, wait, no,
vast distances you're just from arguing each other.
Hey, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. This will probably be a fabulous one. We'll see. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and hey, we'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell down there if you want notifications. Yeah, if you don't like it, dislike it. We can take it.
And I happen to be Mr. Casey Rochford. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. If you would like to hear some of the acoustic reverberations that come from the back of our twisted minds, you can hang out to the end of the episode. It's music. For people that don't speak Casey. So, what shall we talk about tonight?
Well, this could end up being kind of a heavy one. I was thinking, so I'm sure by now everybody's pretty much heard about the goings on with those 4 people that were stabbed to death in Idaho at that college. And apparently they caught a suspect. And so this particular suspect, which I don't think anybody should even say his name. In fact, that's one of the things that I think would go a long way to preventing copycat people or people from being inspired to kill people for fame. We shouldn't even say their name. So I'm not going to say their name. But yeah, this suspect has been caught. I think they're awaiting trial or whatever. But everybody is calling for the death penalty. That this person should be put to death for their crimes.
Well, that's another angle of the name aspect, is like the media has already convicted this person.
Yeah, this is true, and like they always qualify things by adding in the suspect or they're accused of having done this, but by their own statements and actions, they're pretty much building up the case.
This person allegedly butchered with no human soul whatsoever all these people.
Exactly. Well, and there's all kinds of emotive shit thrown in to kind of whip everybody up. So that, yeah, they're basically condemned before they've even gone to trial. And that has had very bad repercussions in the past, that people who are actually innocent, they're just raked over the coals by the media and by the public, and turns out, yeah, they didn't actually do it.
I think this might actually be the anniversary of when something similar happened to me.
Oh, well, I think we're going to go in a bunch of different directions here, but I think we should start off with just talking about the death penalty in general. And I know we've kind of talked about that in the past, but I don't think this is a topic like many of our topics. I don't think this is a topic that really has an end point. The conversation can't really be over about it, especially something like this that's kind of, it isn't really like a data based thing. It's not like a fact based thing. It's more of like cultural or societal or moral and ethical kind of like. And I don't know if there's really an answer to certain things, but I personally, for me, I have an answer for the death penalty. Like I have very strong beliefs about it, but I think this is a good place to start. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think? I mean, why don't we start by outlining like what do you think about the death penalty as a tool for enacting justice?
I I always waver on it. Like I can never really pick a place to perch on the fence or near the fence even. Um
I think that's
if,
actually a sign that's a good sign. Like I think
yeah,
that's a good place to be when it comes to things like this.
and that alone makes me lean towards like having it be a possibility just because I can see situations where it absolutely makes sense, but
Mhm.
most of the time not so much. Especially with like the bureaucratic sludge pace that kind of makes it pointless. Um,
Mhm.
and maybe you could even argue like cruel and unusual because it's like imagine you know you're gonna die, and it reasonably should be considered that it would happen soon after you're told that you're gonna die, and you sit there for 10 years waiting to die. Like that's a
That
little fucked up, I
yeah,
think.
that's a really good point. Like that's almost torture
It is.
in a sense that you're sitting there not knowing and
Each
going
day you wake up
yeah,
could be the day you die,
could be. Yeah.
and you
Well
might not even be guilty.
and they say, oh well, now we have lethal injection and stuff, and it's essentially humane, but it yeah, okay, maybe the specific process they're using is humane, but that whole delay, that timeline, um, just sitting there waiting to die, being on death row, like, well, it's going to happen eventually. Like, what does that do to somebody's psyche? I mean, there are people who went to the Nazi camps and stuff like that. They were there for shorter periods of time than people who are on death row spend. Like,
I,
and they knew they were going to die too. Like, it's only a matter of time.
I guess you could argue, though, that long, torturous wait on death row is their punishment, and that the death penalty itself is an outward deterrent because you've made the point before, like it's not deterring them if they've got no chance to reconcile their behavior
Yeah.
because they're dead. But I mean, like the outward impact, I think, has always been the goal in that. Um, Yet it's still arguable whether or not that even makes an outward impact.
Well, and I guess I'll kind of throw out a few of my own thoughts on this that I don't think, at least in the US, our justice system is not built around specifically punishing people. It wasn't designed to be a punitive system where you do something wrong and we whip you until you cry and beg for forgiveness. It's like, well, it was constructed around the idea of rehabilitation, making people better, improving things. That you want this person who did something wrong to right that wrong and come out into society a better person. That they now can benefit society in some way and maybe even spend the rest of that time making amends. And that, in my mind, is a good thing. Like that's what we should be focusing on. The death penalty to me feels a lot like just outright punishment that like you're not even given a chance to make amends. They just want to punish you so that people feel better about themselves for some reason. Oh, you took something from me, so now I'm going to take something from you. And I don't think that makes society better. In fact, I don't think it makes the victims feel better or put them in a better place. I mean, you can't bring somebody back from the dead. So what is the actual solution to that? Is it that the person who made alive people no longer alive, being no longer alive themselves, is that an appropriate response to that? Does that make things stable, leveled out, I
Well,
guess? Or
again, that's an eye for an eye perspective of it.
yeah,
Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that a person who murders person X, it's not like uh executing that person actually is the thing that brings about the justice. It might give some closure, and
maybe.
all that, but the actual like arm of justice is supposedly like in the overall deterrent of murdering people to others, like, hey, if you guys murder people, you'll die, like, and it's, I mean,
So
on
it just
principle and even like even in practice, I think to a great degree, probably it actually is effective, especially when you have like such a large chunk of the population that thinks if we didn't have religion, we'd all be killing each other.
well,
uh
true,
Speak for yourself, like.
but even in the peak of religious fervor, people were killing each other probably even more than now. So but the thing is, like, I don't, maybe that kind of deterrent, knowing that if you kill somebody, you're going to be killed yourself, maybe that might be beneficial for some people, but I think it's a very small proportion of the population. I think that people who are willing to kill people, they don't have anything to lose. Like, you obviously have to be at your wits' end to resort to murdering somebody. Like,
Well,
so at that point, what does the law matter? What retribution? Who cares? You're at that point where none of that matters. And I mean, so who, like, I don't see it as being that specific thing being an effective deterrent. And I think deterrence doesn't.
I just realized though it is an effective deterrent against most people, not psychopaths. Like, it probably won't touch psychopaths because nothing does. Right and wrong is like all convoluted there.
Mhm.
But if you've ever been like so mad and you've just been like, I could kill someone, and then like somewhere in the back of your head is like, you don't want to do that. You may not even notice that the knowledge that you could get the death penalty just for getting pissed off, possibly, right? I mean, I know most of the people there, if not all of them, it's like a premeditated situation,
Yeah.
especially egregious, usually. But I mean, imagine a society where like people just rampantly killed each other. It would probably be a lot stricter. So I think that is kind of a fire suppressant force, is just
What?
that knowledge in the back of your head that like, if I do something rash over something temporary and minuscule, I could die.
Yeah,
I think that stops a
maybe.
lot of people.
Well, I think, like I said, I think it does apply to a certain proportion of the population.
Yeah.
Um, but
Much
I
like
mean,
the media pumping up drunk driving being, like this uh devastating killer of people. I mean, like, statistically, when you bear it out, it's like it's not always all that probable that something bad will happen, but it is still a good idea to deter it,
yeah.
right?
But
So
again, it doesn't actually stop it.
that
Um,
sentence was like such a stutter, sort of like
well, it doesn't actually stop anything from happening, and if you look at the murder rate across the world, it really hasn't. I mean, it fluctuates and stuff like that, but it hasn't suddenly decreased um, because of laws and because of
Ah.
things like that. And it hasn't suddenly increased because certain states in the US abolished the death penalty. Like it's basically
Statistics,
unchanged.
though, especially when
Well,
you,
but I don't mean it as like a definitive kind of thing. It's more of a frame of reference, right? Like,
I don't even think it can frame it, though, is
well,
what I'm
no,
trying
but
to say. Like,
relativity, though, speaking in a relativistic standpoint, like if you're arguing that the death penalty decreases people's incentive to commit murder, um, but a certain state that eliminates the death penalty, if the murder rate doesn't change, well, then that shows that the death penalty didn't have an effect on that.
no,
That
it doesn't. You're talking about human beings
Well, wait,
and
no,
vast
but you're just
distances from each
arguing.
other.
No, you were arguing that the existence of the death penalty was an impediment to committing murder. So if you remove that punishment, well, you would expect people to murder more. So if people don't murder more and it just remains kind of a fluctuating flat line, essentially, well, then that demonstrates that
No,
that isn't. I mean, at least in that
there's a
particular
problem with
situation.
the logic there, and that's like the existence of a law is not necessarily required to maintain the impact of when it was a law. And
Well,
by that I mean like it builds in social mores. Um, like the very fact that we all decided it's kind of shitty to kill another human, we should like not like Tom over there for doing that. Um, all of that like culminated into what we value as really good and really bad.
you,
And
okay,
it could have
no,
been anything,
no, you're
really.
right. I mean that's true, but that also kind of illustrates my point that it's not legislation and retribution that has that effect, but cultural norms, like like the peer pressure, essentially, that you don't want that kind of societal um, gaze upon you, and so you're more likely to act in accordance with that. I mean, my own personal thing, it's like, okay, well, my absolute core belief is the initiation of force can never be justified, and I live by that. And so like I would never do that simply on that principle that, okay, well, if I am to be who I am and to be justified in the way that I am, well, then I could never possibly act in violence against another person unless they aggressed upon me first, obviously. Well, that seems fair. Self-defense and all that. Um, so I mean, I think there's more going on than just simply laws on the books and that kind of prospect of a punishment like that uh, coming upon you. The thing is too, when you're on death row, people appeal and appeal and appeal for years or decades.
Yeah.
So it's
But
like it's not immediate that oh well, you're caught, you're found guilty, and
yeah,
they wheel you off and put you to death immediately.
like we were talking about, like the psychological torture of that is kind of fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
But before we go in that direction, can you define where the initiation of force is in this argument? Is it the initiation of force to execute someone who
Mm.
killed someone else? Like there's
Actually,
a chain of initiations. Like
that
it's all
that's
about
a
perspective who initiated something.
no, you're spot on right there. That's a very, very good point to bring up.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to the actors involved, the four people who were stabbed and the stabbee, or the stabor, four stabbies and one stabor, um, those people. So the four people who were stabbed, they had force initiated against them. They were sleeping, and somebody came in and stabbed them and killed them. Like they didn't do anything to start that fire.
Well,
Like,
I don't know the background of this story really,
well,
but
and yeah, I don't really know all the details either,
like,
but
was it premeditated? Did he know these people? Because then there could be a reasonable suspicion to look into whether or not there was some initiation on that end too.
well, no, you're right. That we'll find out after, like, later on, as trial commences and more details come to light. Um, but let's just say, in this case, if it was just simply somebody who just didn't like people, had a grudge against them, and decided, hey, I'm gonna go kill these people tonight because I don't like them. They're sleeping in their bed. That he just doesn't like the fact that they love playing Minecraft, and he thinks Minecraft is stupid, and he's willing to kill people over it. I don't know. Let's just say that's an initiation of force. They didn't do anything other than simply existing and enjoying Minecraft, and this person took it upon themselves to end their existence on planet Earth because of something passive. Now that's an encapsulated event. If those people or somebody in there saw what was going on and reacted, and, say, picked up a knife themselves and stabbed the stabber, killing him, well, then they would not be initiating force. They'd be responding to that initiation. But when you take it into the what's going on right now, so cops who were not there, who were never threatened by that, arrested this person, and they put him in a jail cell, and now there's a whole trial. There's a jury who they have no skin in the game personally. There's a judge. The judge was never there, never personally threatened by this guy. And then some kind of decree comes down. Let's say the ruling is, yeah, he's found guilty and the death penalty. Well, now what you're saying is, it kind of makes sense that, like, well, you're not responding to an imminent threat. There was a thing that happened over there, and now you're basically doing the same thing, ending another person's life, um, like, completely independently of the circumstance. So at that point, I would have to say the executioners are initiating force against the guilty party.
But now it's your trolley problem. So you either like abolish the ending of the life of the person that goes out and ends multiple lives, or you let them go on ending multiple other lives. Like, which impact is the one that you would rather go with, right? It would probably be the least impactful, because you
Well,
can't change the past, but you can affect the future.
yes, yes, you can. And I think, above everything, our system, our judicial system, our prison system, whatever, it should all be built around the premise of creating the most good. Like, people should be rehabilitated. We should find a way to help people make amends, as in whatever way they can. I mean, obviously you can't raise the dead yet. So, but if a person who did something really awful could go on to do something really great later, I mean, I guess that's a net positive. Um, it, okay, I do have to throw out this, that I do think there are situations where the death penalty makes sense. Um, and I'm not 100% sure that I'm completely behind this idea, but it makes sense in the context of the here and now, of protecting lives. If we don't have an answer, if we don't know how to solve somebody's mental issues with the technology and the understanding we have right now, perhaps if somebody has a history, like, and I mean a history where you have a whatever, a perpetrator who has done the same thing over and over again, like several times, they've been released, they've gone out, they've killed more people, where it's like, okay, we don't know how to fix this person. I mean, I guess you could put them away in a cell for the rest of their lives until they die, but maybe just ending it all might make sense, because the way the system is too, they could get back out and do it again. Um,
I do
one,
agree with you though.
yeah.
But what about the trolley coming at you? Like your perspective now is like seeing what the trolley has done. And it's like you've already put it on the track where didn't have the death penalty and now like more deaths happened. And now imagine you're over here and you're like, "Oh, look at this history. Now we can kill him." Well, it's like you've basically just said we have to let lots of people die before we decide this one person dies.
Well, okay, no, you're right. I completely understand that. I think though we should at least make the attempt to rehabilitate people. That if somebody is beyond our understanding and beyond rehabilitation within that framework, then maybe that's the only recourse that we have to just wash our hands of the situation and be like, okay, we can't do anything for this person. I guess we're gonna have to kill him. Which is, it really sucks because I don't believe that anybody is beyond rehabilitation. But it's a matter of like, how much do we know about the human psyche? How much do we know about the circumstances? Um, and how much effort are people willing to put out to try to solve these problems? I mean,
Yeah.
you
Instead of
know,
funding 10 years on death row, fund a really good psychologist.
yeah. Well, sure, why not? I mean, we need to be paying attention to this stuff because the, that kind of understanding doesn't just end at this one particular convict's life or whatever. It could have far-reaching implications for everybody. That like, wait a minute, if we understand how mass murder happens, how serial killers work or something, like, well, maybe we could stop it before it happens. We could help people before they even go down that road when they're like young kids, if we simply understood it. Um, but instead, well, the system is kind of like reactionary, like, oh, well, I don't know what we're doing and we don't know how to fix this. We'll just give them some drugs and hope things get better. Oh, hasn't gotten better. Well, I guess we'll give this other person some drugs and hope it gets better. And like, why are all these people killing people? Like,
Hey, get off the street. Don't do drugs.
yeah,
Well, I'm sad. Here, take these drugs.
take those drugs, exactly. Which might actually be far more psychoactive than some of the street drugs you could find. Oh, and there is actually some correlation there that a lot of people, I mean, for sure, people who have killed people, they obviously have mental health issues. I mean, it's a given. But there's definitely a connection there with people taking psychoactive medications that are supposed to fix things. And well, it makes things worse. Like, and the thing is, we don't understand anything really. Like, we know more about the bottom of the ocean than we do about our own minds. We know
Wow.
more about deep space than we do what's inside of our skulls. Um, so it's really no wonder that nothing works, that we're kind of grasping at straws and just flailing about hoping that something sticks to the wall and people get better. And like, well, if you've ever checked out the DSM, you know how fucking terrible that is. Oh, oh my god.
Well, and then there's the beta version, the BDSM.
Which actually might, that would actually go further to helping people get better than the DSM actually.
I don't know about the people that are into snuff films, though. That may not really rehabilitate them.
Well, as long as you're only role playing, that's the thing. If it's only role play, you can get it out of your system, in a safe situation, and carry on with your life. So maybe, I don't know, but
Actually, yeah, that's an interesting topic to go into that really does relate to the death penalty is like, how much should we maybe try indulgence? Like relaxing a little bit on what's okay and what's not.
As a therapy, right?
Yeah, to like let the steam off and stuff. It's like I've said before, like all this preaching of abstinence and covering of breasts and things like that, prostitution being illegal. I feel like all of that stuff contributes to rape because it builds up these like pressure zones, and there's no way to release the pressure until it just boom, and
Sure. And
we certainly do that with murder too. Like like the killdozer,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
perfectly normal guy, government drives him to like kill people.
Well, he didn't really kill that many people. Actually, I
Yeah,
don't know if he destroyed a lot of shit, but it was very particular. So he was
yes,
calculated in that way.
yes, yeah, you're right. I stand corrected. He didn't,
But then you have like Timothy McVeigh.
but he was like
You
really
know,
extreme and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the point. It's like we build these pressure valves,
Hmm.
and
And there's no outlet.
yeah.
Like there's no way to let it out.
Mhm.
And oh
And I'm
god,
not talking about the purge. It's not like we need to be that loosey goosey.
no, but maybe giving people a way to kind of get out their feelings might kind of minimize that. That
Yeah.
they're like I've I've recently gotten into watching videos about um, true crime and stuff like that, and there's a lot of cases where people simply kill people because they just want to feel what it feels like, um,
Yeah.
because reasons I don't know, I can't understand that, but people do that, and maybe if there's a safe way to kind of experience that, some form of that, then whatever's driving people in that direction could be minimized. Like
Yeah.
maybe we could.
Maybe that's video games.
It could be. In fact, oh yeah, yeah, and like everybody's saying,
Yeah.
well, video games cause violence, and I'm saying, actually, I think they prevent violence.
Yeah.
That
I
that
mean, sure, there's going to be the people that like find an indulgence in that and it kind of goes the other way, but that's so much like not the norm
Mhm.
for that sort of phenomenon to happen. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so video games could really be like, you throw on Grand Theft Auto and, you never run any of the missions. All you do is just run over hookers, like, that is like, it should be okay. It is okay.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from my own experience, like if I had a bad day or something like that, like it's super cathartic to play Doom and just blow away everything.
mhm.
Like it just feels good. And after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to some hippie music now. Like, oh, I feel pretty okay. Like I don't feel angry anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and
Heavy metal can do that. You get pissed off, you listen to a good metal song, and you're like, yeah,
Mhm.
all right, got some energy out.
Which also again, people have said, oh, the metal music and rock and roll, it's like gets people all pumped up and stuff. No, it's like, okay, there's a thing, a psychological effect that happens. Like when you're sad, it doesn't help you to listen to happy music. That doesn't make you happy. Listening to sad music levels things out,
Yeah.
and yeah, you're sad, but then you feel better after that. Like it's not the happy music that makes a sad person happy, it's the sad music that makes a sad person happy eventually.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with somebody who's got stuff going on in their lives and doesn't have a means of dealing with it. um like maybe just a bunch of death metal and playing a bunch of violent video games will get that out, and maybe that person won't do something crazy. But it's also important to recognize at the same time, like the parents, the family around a person, their neighbors, their teachers, whatever, like anybody, coworkers and stuff. Like you got to look for behavioral things. Like, hey, you know what? Something changed in my coworker or my friend or my kid. Like they're acting all weird, and the stigma around mental health is a huge problem too. That people don't want to bring it up. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to say, hey, I'm depressed. I'm feeling suicidal, or I'm feeling like I want to do something violent. Like that's not okay in most societies to talk about. And so it gets bottled up and put inside, and it just builds and builds and builds like a pressurized container until eventually, well, there's so much pressure, it's got to go somewhere, and
Yeah.
people snap. Um, oh, link to the snapping video up there.
Yeah, there's I had a couple of thoughts at the same time, and then they bounced off each other, and I've lost them both.
Shit, sorry, I went on a long diatribe there. Sorry.
But they already came back to me once from earlier, so I'm sure it'll come up. Oh, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The small percentage of times that having the death penalty actually did deter something. I mean, isn't it worth it to have that one? Because if you flip this on the other end, you're talking about the Second Amendment. You're not very likely to get killed by somebody, but you want to retain your right to defend yourself. Well, it's like now I go back to my earlier question, like define for me where the initiation of force actually began, because it's going to be each person's perspective on how they got to that point, you know.
Well, oh, you're right. The say a perpetrator in a violent incident might see their own version of justification of why they did what they did. You discover that your partner is cheating on you or something like that, and it fills you with rage, heat of the moment kind of stuff, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna kill everybody. Um, like it, which of course I don't understand that, but I do at the same time. I get why people resort to that. Um, it's emotions. Like relationships are emotional, and you have a certain emotional stake in a relationship. And if things change, especially if you feel slighted, well, that all those emotions just like flip polarity all of a sudden. And now the what we used to be like super positive is now super negative. Um, and so all that energy gets diverted in that direction.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see why people go in that direction. Um, but I still go back to the idea that we should be always focusing on rehabilitation, that figuring out, we should be looking to why people do what they do, why they did what they did, and
Well,
try
eh,
to help them become a productive part of society, that
yeah.
like they can, wouldn't that be the best result that we could possibly hope for?
Some people are going to point to our attempts at rehabilitation now and say, there you see, it's proof that it doesn't work. Well, you're looking at a band-aid,
Yeah.
right? Like you might have a prison psychologist for 500 prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Are they all going to get grade A 100% attention from the prison psychiatrist or whatever?
No.
Like you need to expand your bandaging quite a bit.
Sure. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We don't understand the human mind, just barely. We are just barely at the cusp of comprehending the vastness of what's in the human mind. So, this idea that, oh, well, it doesn't work because we've tried this like basically stone age practices. Like, oh well, let's just cut a hole in someone's head. Let's lobotomize somebody because that I think that'll work. And when it doesn't, give
Jeez,
somebody a bunch of psychoactive medications and hope for the best. It's
man.
like, well, that's not evidence it doesn't work. It's actually kind of evidence that we don't really know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like this episode should earn us like honorary doctorates and maybe even win a Nobel Prize. Because
That'd be
it's
awesome.
it's either going to eliminate serial killers altogether or it's going to create more of them than we have ever seen.
Well,
Because sometimes I can't tell like what we're really defending here. Like, oh, people should be allowed to murder people safely.
well, I
Yeah,
don't,
like,
but yeah, I'm not advocating for that. Like, far from it. Yeah, I just, the thing is, like, we don't really know the answers, and yet society churns along as if we do have all the answers. Like, we possess all the knowledge, we know the right way, oh yeah, it's totally fine. And it does seem a little bit contradictory and somewhat hypocritical to be like, oh well, you've executed this person, so in response we're going to execute you, and that's justice, that's totally fair. Like you said, an eye for an eye. Like, I don't know that that is the right way to do things.
we need to we need to make little jingles, and every time we say like a key word, it'll play. And it's, anytime we say justice, I picture this like uh short cartoon bumper with a little jingle. It's like justice, like it's like our view of justice is like this caricature of what it probably really should be, like
Well, so like a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of thing where
yeah.
the word of the day is said and everybody's like, ah! Ah! Yeah. Oh man,
Okay, we need a talking chair.
we do. Oh, cherry. We need, yeah. Well, I've got a chair back there that could be, yeah. Uh, I don't know.
The cushion doesn't come up on that, so it's more like missing half a jaw.
Well, but it does tilt, so I could animate the tilt, so it's like tilting like this.
It's Stephen Hawking. Like how is Stephen Hawking talking? Like
Oh man. Yeah,
demonetized.
I think we've been demonetized a while ago with all this talk of like murder and stuff. But
You
I think
think?
it's a really important conversation. Like, I don't have all the answers, but I mean, I think about it all the time. Um, and we should be thinking about it. We should care more than, I mean, it really drives me nuts when most people's focus is on the trial. And it's like basically a game show. Like, you remember, I think you were around, right? Old
Encounter at
man.
Farpoint.
Yeah, you were around when OJ Simpson,
Oh
the,
yeah.
the Bronco chase and the trial, and if the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit kind of thing happened. Um, but people, it was like a circus. It was like a parody of any kind of rational justice system. Like, it was all, I don't know, it was just for show, and it felt very idiocracy before idiocracy was really a thing. um it's like, well, everybody focuses on all these details, and it's like the whole celebrity status of a person, and but at the end of the day, behind it all, there's real humans with real human problems and things they're dealing with. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, where your station is in life, everybody is susceptible to mental illness. Um, and we should care more about the lives in there, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while since, well, been a while since I've mentioned biology, probably because I'm not actually working in that field at the moment.
Huh.
But I'm going to mention some biology.
Good. All
Um,
right.
there's there's that hereditary factor too, right?
Mhm.
Um, so what if crime is even partly genetic?
Hmm.
Um, instead of uh all these like prison penances and whether they should die or live, we're not really looking at whether it should be a moral punishment to go the route of uh, restricting the ability to reproduce, and in the unfortunate event that they already have, ending that line. So, what
Ooh.
sounds scarier? Like maybe we're on the better path
Well,
for deterrence.
I mean that does kind
Sins of
of
the father and all that. Like,
it, well, it skirts the line of like Minority Report of like pre-crime and stuff that, well, we know you're going to do this or you're
mhm.
capable of doing this, and so we're gonna enact a punishment before you've even done anything. And when it comes to people procreating and stuff, like, okay, well, sure, you may have a predisposition to be psychopathic or something like that, or sociopathic, um, and maybe be a dickhead or a criminal, do bad things to people. But we can't just be like, well, because you have the potential to do this, we're going to end things, because that's a slippery slope that I could see going in a lot of different directions, where it's like, well, you have the potential to do this or that, and so, well, now the more we know, um like, oh yep, we've discovered you have genetic lineage that suggests you're a potential future Hitler, so we have to just end your life now. um like,
In a very ironic way too. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I don't know if that's the right answer. Maybe because this is the thing: capital punishment is the most brutal solution. It is so,
brutal.
like, yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you know, Neanderthal. It's like monkey level stuff. It's like we don't even know what we're doing, and the only thing we know is how to bash your skull in with a rock, and that's our solution. Because, like, okay, we're more advanced than that, right? We should be. I mean, if we consider ourselves to be uh, like an elegant society, that
Well,
knows
we have
stuff.
lethal injection.
Yeah. Well, that's no different.
Imagine you're grog and you're holding the rock and smashing the skull and going, "Whoa, is this magic?" Because
Well,
that's
it's
how cavemen
basically the
sounded.
same thing. It's just condensed into a liquid that, it's kind of the same thing. So I would hope that we could move beyond that into a sense where we can take our knowledge of how things work, assuming we even have that knowledge, and fix a problem before it starts. Be engineers. Like, engineering is, well, it does involve a little bit of ex post facto kind of thing. Like, oh well, whoa, the bridge collapsed. What happened? But you then take that information, the data you collect, and you build a bridge that won't collapse due to those factors, whatever caused the other one. Like, the Narrows Bridge in Tacoma,
Yeah.
it's a classic one. It okay, and this is wild too. And I'm actually kind of, now I want to dig up exactly the engineering behind the new bridge. So the old bridge
Oh yeah,
collapsed.
you don't have to pass the wind through anymore.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wonder that too.
exactly. So the new one they built after the old bridge collapsed had holes in it to allow the air to flow through, and but then they built a second bridge adjacent the first one, and it has no holes whatsoever, and it's made of concrete. Like, okay, so how did they fix that problem? Like, wasn't the wind the reason? Like the oscillations and stuff it caused, like, so how did they fix that?
Yeah.
Like, but that's the way we should be dealing with things, that like when it comes to people, we
Oh,
should
it's probably the sheer size of it because it's like so many more lanes
Mhm.
than the not original, but the original to this one original.
It's actually the same number of lanes, it's just wider. Well, there's one extra lane ish, um but yeah, the entire bridge is much wider, so
yeah,
maybe it's able to withstand those forces much better. I don't know, but I'd like to know.
yeah,
But that's the thing, it's like that's how we should be treating criminal activity. We should be looking at why something happened in the past. We should be looking at the person, and the goal should not be retribution. The goal should be rehabilitation. How do we take this person who made mistakes? And I mean, if you think you've not made mistakes, anybody out there, well, you're an idiot, because we've all made mistakes, and sometimes really egregious ones. Um, so taking somebody who's made mistakes and helping them to improve and be a better person, to not make those mistakes again, um, and learn enough about the mechanics of what happened so that we can prevent other people from making the same mistakes in the future. Like the idea that, oh, the end all be all solution is just, well, I don't know what happened, they just killed a bunch of people, let's execute them. Like that, to me, it might as well be like 14,000 years ago. It's no different. Nothing has changed. If that is our solution, we're just a bunch of cavemen at that point. Oh, sorry about the Geico people. Didn't mean to offend you. Yeah.
oh, but cavemen sound like this apparently.
Mm, mm.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm a caveman.
that
I'm from
was
down south.
that was a great ad campaign, by the way. Loved it. Oh my god, that was good. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that we're going about it all wrong, and this it's kind of frustrating that the public is totally behind it. Although it's not surprising, because
Oh,
the public,
totally. I mean,
well, I mean, a
it's pretty
lot of
divided.
people, a lot, well, okay, the public, by and large, is behind a retribution based system, like punishment,
Yeah.
that like justice to most people in the world is punishment. um
Life is enough of a punishment.
yeah,
Like
well, yeah,
we should be
exactly.
we should be trying to like improve upon our circumstances instead of increasing the agony and suffering.
Well, and wasting time spinning our wheels, running through the motions, like, oh well, why even have a fucking trial? Why we even have a trial? Just public education, execution. Just like, let's bring back the guillotine and cut people's heads off. Like, we don't even need a trial. Just like an accusation is good enough. Let's just end it all. Like, it's really, that's how it feels. It's that primitive. And I think we're better than that. I think we have the capacity to be a lot better than that, to make better decisions and learn things and make the world a better place.
The
Yeah.
more you know.
If I remember, I'll throw in the star. Well, we need our own version of that.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
dude.
I I basically come to the conclusion that the death penalty is the wrong way to go. except for like very specific situations.
Right, but that's more or less exactly how I describe my philosophy, but it seems a little more like you've focused in one direction more than another. Yeah. Words, not
Yeah, yeah.
there's a point where you're trying to learn a new language where like you can't talk in either language. Like,
The
your
two
brain is all
languages
jumbled up. It's like,
collide.
uh,
Yeah, learning Russian really messed me up.
or
Because a
maybe
lot
that's
of
just how
the
it happens in your 40s. A
yeah, could be.
little late to the game.
Well, it's never too late to learn.
Yeah. I exercise my mind here on Kitchen Sink Microscopy.
Yeah.
Experience a moment frozen time, a golden means to the past you left behind. Behold this moment, a gallery of love. This left in shambles now that push has come to shove.